Oh, man, my name's up there.
Yeah.
But I didn't,
That's because it's recognizing your computer.
but it should recognize Royal Homesteads. That's weird.
Again, those participants attending by Zoom, please be sure to keep your computers on mute. If you have a question after the presentations, please be using the raise your hand feature. Thank you.
See.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Kathy Field Lloyd. I'm the chair of the Forum, which is a program of the Juno Beach Civic Association. Today we're so excited because we have finally an opportunity to have another in-person seminar like this, which we've been doing for 3 years, but 2 of them got hampered by the pandemic. So I guess it's a blessing in some ways because now we can do combination. And I don't know how many we have on Zoom, but we had a pretty good response as far as the number of people that said they were going to participate by Zoom. And we've had more of you come in person than we expected. So that's exciting. It's a great topic and one that's so important to all of us right now. I wanted to acknowledge that Donna Hamilton, who's in the audience here, is the president of the Juno Beach Civic Association. And this program, started under her and it's been moving along pretty nicely. Our purpose is just to try and help board members. I'm a board member. Donna's been a board member. Most of us tend to take our turn. And there's just so much information that we need. And so the forum is really put in place to try and help educate you and help you to network also and be able to talk with other board members and just really stay up to date on best practices. We can't do this without our sponsors. And today our sponsor, one of them is the town of Juno Beach. And I want to thank the mayor, the town manager, Joe Labello, and also Caitlin Copeland, who's sitting back here. She's really does a great job on the technology side of this and makes it better for us here and also for the people on Zoom. So thank you, Caitlin. And then our other sponsor is Kathy Dorn. Kathy Dorn is with South State Bank, and she is really more than a sponsor. She serves on the forum board. She helps line up the speakers. She provides the refreshments. So she's a real vital part of what we have to offer. So Kathy's going to say just a couple words and we'll get started soon.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. My name is Kathy Dorn, as Kathy mentioned. I'm with South State Bank. I'm a vice president and I'm an association relationship manager for the bank. South State Bank is currently operating in 6 states. We have a division that's set up just to work with associations and board members. We provide a full range of services from treasury management services, your operating accounts, reserve accounts, cash sweep accounts if your funds are over the insurance limit. My role primarily is to help board members and property managers put together their financing for capital improvement projects. So I appreciate everyone being here today. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk to you afterwards. Enjoy the program.
Okay. So our speakers today are up on the dais, and one of them is Jane Cornett, and she is an attorney with Becker. She has done seminars for us before, and she's one of the best. Danny Kadich was recommended by one of our forum board members and has seen him present before and highly, highly recommended him. I'm going to let them give you a little bit more of their background. And we're going to go ahead and just get started. I do want to say we would appreciate it if you would save your questions till the end, if you can. Sometimes it's impossible, but and what we'll do is they'll speak for a few minutes each and maybe 20 minutes or so each, and probably will answer some of the questions that you might have. But if they haven't answered them, they will be here to do that following their presentations. All right. Thank you.
I'm going to start this morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jane Cornett. I am an attorney. I started practicing in 1981, which your math tells you was just a little over 40 years ago, at the age of 12. And one of the things I've noticed about Zoom is great. I really do like using it, although I very much appreciate getting to see you all live today. But I've noticed that it adds 10 years to your face, so I'm much younger than I look for those on Zoom. So we're going to talk today about Florida condominium law, or that's what I'm going to talk about. And then he's going to tell you all the really good, interesting stuff. The condo law is Florida Statute 718. And in this particular circumstance, we're talking about Section 8 of subsection 113. So if you want to get a copy of the statute, by the way, you can download it for free if you don't have a copy and want to read it. If you go to the DBPR, Department of Business and Professional Regulation website, they have forms, they have booklets, and they'll download you a copy of the statute. It's, of course, pretty long. When I started practicing in 81, I didn't really know what a condo was, to tell you the truth. They never mentioned it in law school. And the law was about, an inch thick maybe, and now it's probably 2.5. So it's really grown. One of the parts of the law that grew a number of years ago was the law concerning electronic vehicles. And I'm actually going to take the time to read over the statute just so we can kind of focus on it. It was amended last year to include natural gas vehicles. I have not run into that as of yet. We have run into lots of people that want to have charging stations for electronic vehicles. We were talking just before, and in the last 6 or 8 months, we've probably had 10 times the requests that we had before then. So it's really a hot topic on people's minds these days. But at any rate, as the statute says, the legislature made a decision, finds that the use of electronic and natural gas fuel vehicles conserves and protects the state's environmental resources, provides significant economic savings to drivers, and serves an important public interest. Okay? Those words were put into the statute for a good reason. It, first of all, explains to folks why they adopted the law, but it also allows the legislature, when they make that kind of finding, to make the law apply to a community that already exists. Okay. The general premise of Florida law is that new laws apply prospectively. So if they had, excuse me, if they hadn't put that language in, then we would all know that the change only applied to new communities that were being built. But they put that in intentionally so that it would apply to existing condominiums. And no one has challenged that. The law was adopted 4 or 5 years ago. I really can't remember how long ago, maybe even longer than that. When you get old like me, you live in that time warp. And then we all lost 2 years because of the pandemic. But the law's been around for a while and there have been no challenges. So it seems unlikely that there will be, okay? So then it goes on to say the participation of condominium associations is essential to the state's efforts to conserve and protect the state's environmental resources and provide economic savings for drivers. For the purpose of this subsection, and then that defines the natural gas definition. I actually had not heard much about those kinds of vehicles, but someone pointed out to me recently that waste management, I don't know if you guys have them here in Juneau, we have them in Martin County. Thank you. Already has all their garbage trucks operating on natural gas. I really didn't realize that. So that's coming too. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. So next slide, please. Okay. So condominiums are creatures of statute. You can't have a condo without a condo law. We wrote the condo law originally in the late 60s because we wanted to sell air to the Yankees. Okay, so I can't sell you a unit on the second floor or the fifth floor or the 10th floor if I don't have a condo law. Because in Florida law, when I sell you a home, I'm selling you land. It's a real property sale and real estate sale. So what the condo law does is create this legal fiction that when I live on the 10th floor and there's 100 units in the building, I own 1/100th of that dirt that is under the building. So that's why we have condo law, was to allow that kind of sale and mortgages. Because before that, we tried co-ops in Florida, but they didn't go over well because the Florida lenders didn't recognize them as something they could have a mortgage on. So it made them hard to sell if you didn't have the ability to mortgage. So condo law came in for that purpose. But because it is a creature of statute, then the legislature has the ability to make these kinds of restrictions. Turn my page here. So the declaration of condominium or restrictive covenants, because this applies to homeowner communities too, if they exist, or to what are called land condos. They're not common, but it is possible to have single family homes, but it's been condominiumized. Developers sometimes do that because they can't meet zoning restrictions for setbacks. And so they can do it through a condo regime. So you might have restricted covenants instead of a technical condo, but they cannot prohibit or be enforced so as to prohibit any unit owner from installing an electric vehicle charging station or natural gas fuel station within the boundaries of the unit owner's limited common elements or exclusively designating parking area. Okay, so that's where an owner has the right to install a charging station. If he has limited common elements, if it's designated in the declaration, or if he has an assigned parking space. So if your community does not have assigned parking spaces, does not have limited common elements, the statute does not apply to your community. Most have that, either limited common element parking or assigned spaces, most have that. So in most cases, the unit owner will have the right, because that's what the law says, you can't stop them. The Board of Administration of the condo may not prohibit a unit owner from installing an electronic vehicle charging station for the unit for an electric vehicle as defined in 320. And that's basically what we know as electronic vehicles. And then it goes on to natural gas. The installation is subject to the provisions of this subsection, and those are kind of major. Next, please. Okay, the installation can't cause irreparable damage. Irreparable is you can't fix it, right? Cannot be repaired to the condominium property. The electricity for the electric vehicle charging station must be separately metered or metered by an embedded meter and payable by the unit owner installing the charging station or the fuel station. Okay, so the owner who makes the request is got to be able to establish that he or she is going to be the only one paying for the use of electricity. The cost of supply and storage, well, that's natural gas, and I don't want to talk about that. Next slide, please. The unit owner who is installing an electrical vehicle charging station is responsible for the cost of installation, operation, maintenance, and repair, including hazard or liability insurance. The association may enforce payment of such costs under 17116. 116 is the statute that allows the association to file a lien against a unit. So if an owner failed to provide the insurance that's required, the association could purchase the insurance, charge the owner, and if the owner didn't pay, that cost would become a lien on his property. If the unit owner or his or her successor decides there's no longer a need, such person is responsible for the cost of removal, and the association can enforce that cost also under 116. Next slide, please. The unit owner installing, maintaining, or removing the charging station is responsible for complying with all federal, state, or local law and regulations applicable to such installation, maintenance, or removal. And you will find that different jurisdictions have different restrictions. And I'm sure our expert will be able to fill us in on some of that. But we were talking about one of the things I've run into in St. Lucie County, which is to the north. St. Lucie County requires the person installing to hire an engineer to do the inspections for the county. The county has, it's a small county basically, and the county has decided it does not have the expertise to do the inspections. So therefore they require the person installing to provide an engineer, and they actually have a form the engineer has to sign to certify that everything was done okie dokie. And of course, the engineer is going to charge a fee for that, so that increases the cost. The association can also require the unit owner to comply with safety requirements consistent with building codes or recognized safety standards. Okay, recognized safety standards are not defined in the statute, so that means your expert is going to help you know what those recognized safety standards are. Next slide, please. The owner can also be required to comply with architectural standards adopted by the association that govern the dimension, placement, or external appearance of the electric charging station, provided that they can't prohibit the installation or substantially increase the cost of the installation. But the association, through its board, can regulate how the charging station looks. And I really don't know how many options there are in appearance, but we'll find that out when we move forward. They also can require that they engage the service of a licensed and registered firm familiar with the installation or removal and core requirements at electronic vehicle station. And those are folks that have to have special licensing. So it's, you know, I can't just open a company and say, I'm going to install charging stations. Next slide, please. They also can require and should, because remember, if this is for the benefit of a limited number of people, not everybody else in the community should have to bear expense that goes with it. So the association can provide that the owner putting in the station provide a certificate of insurance naming the association as an additional insured on the owner's insurance policy for any claim related to the installation, maintenance, or use of the charging station. And they have to do that within 14 days after getting approval to install the charging station. And that's the kind of thing the condo board wants to require up front, because not every owner can get that kind of insurance, especially in today's market. If they can't provide the insurance, they should not get approved for the charging station. because that's creating liability for everybody in the community. And it isn't the installation that is the concern, it's the use, because people sometimes misuse these kinds of installations. Next slide, please. If the installation causes an insurance in the association's insurance, then the owner who installed it can be required to reimburse the association for the actual cost of any increase in insurance premiums for the master policy, the condo policy, relative to the installation of the vehicle charging station. The next section says the association provides an implied easement across the common elements of the condominium property for the purpose of installing the electric charging station. I have seen that come into play when the existing electric to the building, and this is mostly buildings in the 80s or before, anything after 92, in 1992, the code for construction of condos increased substantially. So buildings that were built after 92 are usually able to accommodate charging stations, but buildings before may not be. So the law says the owner has an easement if he needs to put in a new power line to charge his charging station. There's some practical problems that go with that, but from a legal standpoint, it says the owner has that right. Next slide, please. So let me, I'm just looking at some of those words to make sure. Oh, this one is permissive. It just says that the board, by board decision, can decide to install and operate an electric vehicle charging station or natural gas station if the board thinks that that's a good thing for the community. I am told by my developer attorney friends that all new buildings are going to have charging stations. They're going to come with them. I don't know how they decide how many. I really don't think they're putting them in every parking space, but I'm told that the new buildings are going to do that. And some of my clients, I have about 300 condo clients, have decided that they want to have them available for the community on a commercial basis. You know, you put a credit card in and you charge your vehicle based upon whatever the charge rate is. And then this section says, if the board decides to install a station, that is not considered a material alteration that requires any vote of the community. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. If the board is deciding to install a charging station that's going to be paid for by everybody, from a political standpoint, you might need to get some support from the people of the community. But legally, the board has the power to do that and is not required to get a vote because it doesn't constitute a material alteration, because there's another section in 111 that says material alterations require a vote of the membership. I think that's our last slide. Okay, as Kathy said, I'll stick around for questions, but I'm going to turn it over to the expert.
Thank you. How's it going, guys? Or sorry, yes. My name's Danny Kadosh. I work for High Power. I'm a senior account manager, a project design manager. I've been doing electrical for about 25 years. I'm a licensed journeyman. I'm a licensed master electrician, and I have about 12 certifications in the electric field. Okay. So next slide, please. A little bit about High Power is, we do have one of the largest service departments in Florida. We have the most licensed electricians on the road in Florida. And we're always going with the time. So what is up and coming? What is new? What is the new advancements of technologies? You know, we have our marketing director who's sitting right there, who's always keeping us up to date. That's Peter. It's a very forward-thinking company. Next slide, please. We have 4 locations that we currently work out of now, but we are pretty much in the entire state. Next slide, please. So in the last 4 years or 5 years, we've been doing electric vehicle charging stations. But realistically, over the last 8 to 10 months, it's been huge. Like, it's just out of control. Everyone knows about it. People are buying electric vehicles, and it's all the problems that come with that are now starting to arise, and people are starting to notice, okay, you can't just go and put in a charging station. There's a lot that comes with that. So, I'm going to get through the introductions of that quick, but then we're going to get down to the really good stuff. Next slide, please. So the process is, you're going to have an electrician come out. You want a charging station. You have the electrician come out, show them approximately where you want it. They're going to call their supplier. Their supplier is going to say, okay, this is what we sell. They're going to give you a proposal. And then if you move forward, that's when you're going to start seeing, oh, well, we didn't think of this, or we didn't think of this, and we didn't take into account this area or this far distance from the electric panel. So there's a lot of things to consider. When we come out, that's what we'll do with you, is we take you through the whole process so that you know from beginning to end exactly what's entailed. Next slide, please. So these are the main questions. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you have to speak into the microphone. To the microphone, please, so the Zoom members can hear you. Thank you.
I'm a retired architect, and I would like to know whether, when you install these charging stations, do you connect to the building's existing electrical system?
Yes, so we're gonna touch on that. We do tap into the building's electric system. So it's dependent on how much power is available. And if we're gonna go off house power, how the building is gonna get the money back for the power used, as well as what's gonna happen when they run out of house power because they've been putting charging stations against the house power of the building.
And if you connect to the building's existing power, do you reimburse the building for the power that you use for your?
We're gonna
charging
touch
station?
on that too. So I'm gonna get to that because there's a whole lot of information that comes with that. So we'll get to that question because that's gonna fall into what types of chargers there are, what kind of chargers you want for the building, what the board decides to do, what the association decides to do, and how to move forward on the car chargers.
All right.
All righty, next slide, please. So level 1 chargers. A level 1 charger is a regular plug-in. It's household power, right? They run on either 15 or 20 amps of single phase 120 volt. It's the exact same plug that you would use when you plug in a computer or your TV or anything else. It should be a dedicated circuit because it is going to use 12.5 amps on 15 and about 16 amps on 20, or approximately 1,400 to 1,900 watts of power. Now, we're going to touch on level 1 chargers a little bit later as well, when you have the issue of everybody in the building wanting their own charging station for their car. This is what you're going to have to do. Unless you're going to bring brand new power into the building, if you want to get 200 or 300 people to plug in their car, building might not even have enough power for that. But the best case scenario is the level 1 charger, which is the easiest solution because it's simple power. It's not a lot of power, but if you're going to have a vehicle that you're going to drive a lot and you're going to do a lot of mileage, it's going to take a day, 2 days, 3 days to charge the car from 0 to full because it's not a lot of power going into the car. Most EV cars don't drop past 50%. They let the driver know, hey, you're at 50, you got to go fill up. And they don't really charge past 90%. So realistically, the people that are only driving 3 to 6 to 10 miles a day on the level 1, they'll have it plugged in for 6 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours overnight, and they'll be charged by the morning. Next slide, please. The level 2 charger is the charger that everyone is talking about when we're talking about EV chargers. So these chargers run 6,200 to 7,200 watts. They have newer ones now that are about 9,000 watts. Watts is the amount of power used to charge the vehicle. So the higher the watts, the faster the charge. So as technology advances, they're coming out with better chargers all the time, all the time. The level 2 chargers is generally, when we're all talking about chargers, that's what everybody's thinking about charging stations. Next slide, please. The level 3 fast chargers are the ones you'll see on the side of the highways or the gas stations. These are monsters on electricity. They take a significant amount of power. You could run 6, 10 houses full of people, all cooking with the AC on at the same time. That's how much power these guys use. They're just, they have to do an infrastructure to put these chargers in. These chargers don't just get put in. They have to build the infrastructure first, get it passed by the city, then they can put these chargers in. A lot of buildings want this charger because it's convenient. They charge a car in 20, 30 minutes. No building just off the bat has that kind of power. It's 480 volts. They used to be 250 amps. Now they're about 80 amps. So again, as years move forward and technology advances, they're just coming out with better chargers.
I'm sorry, you have to talk into the microphone so the Zoom members can hear you. Thank you.
My question is, does the electricity have to come from the building or can it come from Florida Power, like off of Ocean Drive? Like if you were building a home?
So if you were going to do something like this, you'd have to get an engineered design before even talking to FPL. Then you talk to FPL and then they'll decide if they're going to give you the power. So some things you have to take into account. If you're one of 50 buildings on the beach and you want an increase in power, yeah, FPL could do that. What if the other 50 buildings want that extra power? What if FPL doesn't have that extra power? So it's a process. It's definitely a process. We're going to get to that as we keep going through the slides, because these are all the questions I get every week, multiple meetings. They're normal and they're great questions. So we built the presentation. Sorry, Peter built the presentation. I just helped out on making sure we touch base on all of these questions that are all relevant to how we're going to move forward. Next slide, please. So first question, how many chargers is it best to start off with? I want to put 10. I want to put 12. Don't. Put in 4, because in 2 years from now, the chargers are going to be way better and much more convenient, much more available, just like LEDs. When LEDs came out, they really weren't that bright and they were super expensive. Today, you can get them literally anywhere and they cost nothing and they're super bright. Similar to level 3 charger from 4 years ago that took 66% more power than it takes today. So just wait, put in what you need right now and wait a year, wait 2 years when you need more, because in 2 years, 3 years from now, the chargers are going to be different. You might not need as much power to charge the cars. So you're going to spend all this money to build this giant infrastructure that in 2 years from now, you never had to do. Now, these infrastructures run anywhere from $60,000 to $300,000, depending on the building, the size, the type, the area. So start off with what you need to accommodate whoever you can, and then move forward after that. Next slide, please. Best location suitable. You want to be as close to the electrical room as possible. Sometimes it's just not something that you can have, which is why, we can do underground, we can do overhead. There's lots of different ways to get power from point A to point B, but the closer you are to the electrical room, the cheaper it's going to be to install. And moving forward, when you have to add power, it's always going to back off on the electrical room, right? Or you want to pretty much just set it up so that it's convenient for everybody, but keep that in mind. You also want it to be communal. So if you're not going to put in a charging station for each individual unit owner, put it somewhere that everybody can go to, guest spots or front of the building, put in 4 chargers. People can pull up, charge. If you have valet, even better, because they'll move the cars for you. If you don't, just be competent or be reasonably, what's the word I'm looking for? Conscientious. Thank you. Sorry. Of what you're doing, because other people are going to have to charge. So if you're going to charge your car in a communal station, charge your car, move your car afterwards so someone else can charge. Next slide, please.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
If you're going to install multiple stations and you want it closest to the power system, can you put them outside? Because I noticed in the photo there, you had it inside.
You can put them anywhere you want.
Okay.
They're all UL listed and approved to pretty much be in any location you want to put them.
And the owner can be charged for the installation?
Yeah, so it depends. So if you can't You can charge the owner for the installation, but what happens if you're using building power and you charge the owner, they're still using building power. So they're going to have to put in a station that's still going to be an app-based station or a credit card station that the association can recoup the money from charging the vehicles.
Okay. You do have a
Oh, yeah.
capability for chart, for,
And we're going to, I think that's like 2 slides from now, but yeah, we're going to touch base on all the different types of chargers. Okay. Information the city is going to be looking for. So in the last year, the city has been realizing all of the loopholes of putting in chargers because 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a unit owner wanted a charger. They bought a Tesla. No problem. I built a drawing, gave it to the city. They passed it. We put it in their spot using building power. The building is not recouping the money. As times move forward, they're starting to realize, okay, you know what? This is something that's going to be huge. So they're regulating on when we do the design, they want to see where we're taking power from, how much power is already coming out of that electrical panel or main distribution board. Are we going to overload the panel? And we have to prove that we're not. We have to do all the load calculations, get with the engineer. If you have building drawings, it makes things a lot easier because those drawings will already have all those load calcs built in from when the building was built or altered. And then we just piggyback off of that, showing, no, this is what the building is using. This is what we're adding. We're not going to overload. And there's still some space left because you also don't want to take up all the power. Next slide, please.
are you going to employ a electrical engineer to determine whether the building could handle the load?
It depends. If the building has drawings that already have load calcs, we're not exceeding 400 amps, or we're not using we're not exceeding 400 amps or using 480 volt, we don't need an engineer as long as we can prove our load calcs are correct. So we do the load calcs in-house.
Okay, well, if you don't provide the engineering, then we would charge the users, whoever wants this charging station, we would, of course, want them to pay for the installation.
Yeah. Issues that buildings run into. It's always power. I want 10 stations. You have enough power for 1. What do? You either have to decide if you're going to bring in new FPL power, which then runs into, if you're going to get new power from FPL, they want to know how much power you need. I want 1,000 amps. Okay. Are you going to use 1,000 amps? Well, we have 1 or 2 people now, but we expect in the next 5 years, we're going to have 10 to 20 people. You don't need that much power. They don't want to give you that much power because there's other buildings that want that much power. So you have to prove how much power you actually need and how much power you're going to use after they give you the new power. Alternatively, if you don't have drawings and you don't know how much power you're using, we have meters that we can get that we hook onto the building that actually tell us exactly how much power you're using, or we can use your FPL bills for the last 2 or 3 years to come up with a common number or an average number. So we know pretty much what you're using, but there's ways to get around that. But keep in mind that not all buildings have enough power to give power to these charging stations. Next slide, please. The different types of chargers. You're going to like this one. So we talked about the level 1. The level 1s aren't really smart chargers. You just plug them in, you plug them to your car. That's pretty much it. Level 2, which are the most common chargers, there's so many different brands and so many different price. What you want to look for is, if you're going to do communal, which is what I suggest to everybody, because as technology is advancing, you're going to see changes. We do the app-based chargers. So you get a charger, it's going to be hooked onto the building power. Let's say we do 4 chargers for the building. We're going to take building power, and any user that's going to want to use a certain type or certain brand of charger is going to have to download the app onto their phone. Then attach your credit card to the app, kind of like a user. And then before they can charge at that building, the building or the association manager, the property manager has to give them permission. So I can't just pull my car up because I have the app and charge on your charger. I still have to get permission from the building to charge on the charger. Once they give me permission, then it'll actually start feeding juice into the car. Minute I'm done charging, money comes off of the credit card and goes directly into the association account. So they recoup the money used, as well as you can charge a little bit extra to amortize the initial cost that the building paid to do the infrastructure, to install the chargers as an amenity to the people. So That's usually the direction I try to get buildings to go because it makes things a lot easier on the building power load. It makes it convenient for everybody, as well as they amortize the initial cost of installing everything. Now it's up to the building and the association how much they're going to charge on top of just the FPL fees to amortize the cost of the installation. But, you know, that's something they have to decide with the board and with the association that's best for the building. We don't get involved in that. We just give you all of the information you need to make the decision on your own. Next slide, please. So we're back to shared chargers or individual chargers. So when you have a community of people that don't agree and everybody wants, I want my own charger in my spot. I don't want to use a communal charger. I don't want to park in a guest spot. I want to charge my own vehicle. At that point, you have to make a decision on, okay, if that's what we're going to do we have the infrastructure to give everybody in their own spot a level 1 charger at least so they can plug in a normal power plug. So the building, in my experience, would pay for the infrastructure to have a box close enough to every parking spot so that no unit owner will pay any more or any less than anybody else to actually have the plug put in their spot. Now, it's not just about putting the plug in the spot. You have to meter that plug because you got to know how much power they're using from the building. So then you have the cost of adding a meter. Then you need somebody to go and read the meter, or unless you get an app-based meter that tells you what you're using, but you still have to charge the client back for the power that they used. The only way to get around this is if you can get power directly from the unit owner's panel that's off of their own FPL meter, which is a rare occasion. Usually it's meter stacks in a building that go straight up to the panel. If there's 10 stories, yeah, we could go from the 10th story and bring it right down to the parking garage and give that unit owner their own charger. As people want to do this more and more, you can't drill that many holes in that floor or that concrete base of that building because the building's just going to fall down. So if you start with that, you're going to run into problems. You want to get in front of that and say, okay, we can't do that because we can't give it to everybody. So, you know, we'll help to come up with the best plan for you guys to see what you guys want to do and just give you all the information. But everyone has to be on the same page as what's best for the building, what's best for the community, and what's best for the people. You know, communal chargers is always the way I go because realistically, when you're doing 5 or 10 miles a day on a level 2 charger, you'll charge in half an hour, 45 minutes. It's really not that bad. Next slide, please. Determine your building's electrical capacity. So again, if you don't have up-to-date drawings and you don't have good drawings, we can do the load meters or we can take your FPL bills to see how much power you're using, to see what is left over for us to use, but still give you enough of a buffer because you're going to change rooftop units. You're going to add this, you're going to add pumps as time progresses. We have to make sure we leave you enough power to be able to do other things as well, not just fill it up with EV chargers and then you have to change a rooftop unit. You need another 10 amps and you don't have it. So again, something we do in the planning stages of going through everything. Next slide, please. Track and charge, app-based. Always, in my opinion, is app-based. It records everything. It charges the client directly. It's already the association money. So it's your money essentially to do improvements to the building. You know, it's only going to cost you about between $5 and $10 to fill up your car on an EV level 2 charger, depending on what the building is going to charge you, which is determined by you guys. So as long as everybody's on the same page and everyone can agree, it's the easiest, simplest, cost-efficient way of going about it because it can satisfy everybody. It really can. When people want to do their own thing and track their own usage, it just causes more people to get involved and it creates a lot more steps in a process when 5 and 10 years from now, who knows if, you know, EV vehicles are even going to charge themselves as they're driving. We don't know. So that, you know, I like the app-based chargers. It just makes things simple. Next slide, please. All right, let's just go to the last one. These are just testimonials of installs that we've done of all types of EV chargers, power generators, lighting. But I just want to talk about EV chargers. So if I haven't answered anyone's questions, please let me know. Yeah.
The federal government's talking about putting in thousands of chargers throughout the country. And these will be, I'm sure there will be rapid chargers, fast chargers. It seems to me that it may become like gassing up your car.
Yeah.
So my question is, does it make sense for us to plan to install chargers, in our case, 53 units, spending $100,000 or $200,000 to do this, when it may be that we'll be charging our vehicles like we gas up our cars now?
That's why I like to say to start with what you need right now. You need 2, you need 4, do that. Don't plan 2 years from now, we're going to put in 50 because you don't know what it's going to be like in 2 years from now. Just put in what you need.
Electrical boxes are in the way the power comes in or in the parking garage. Can't you put a sub box in there, run power to each individual car off their own meter without going all the way up to the apartment, which would be coring and doing all that?
So if there's smaller meter stacks on the main level of the building and the electrical room or the property itself allows us enough room and clearance to come off of the meter to install a sub panel, which then feeds back up to their panel, but also gives them a location down below, yeah, you can do that. And, an average cost, I literally 2 weeks ago did a design similar to that. The average cost for one person to plug in their own car in their own spot and do that was between $8,000 and $10,000.
Okay, so you can do that then.
Sometimes it depends on the infrastructure of the building. If the meter stacks are tight knit or old, or let's say they're Federal Pacific or they're a company that's not UL listed today, the minute you touch it, because the meter stack is 1 unit, the minute you touch it, you have to change the entire thing. Right? So it's not always simple. I literally in 70 or 80 buildings that I've, done a design for in the last 8 or 9 months, only one. And it was like 2 weeks ago in Boca that they could do that, where they could come off of the meter in the main electrical room, install their own sub panel, still feed back up to their regular panel and go to their spot with their charger, and it'll just come off of their meter as it is now.
Thank you.
No problem.
I was wondering how much you charge for the fees for your services, and if it's appropriate to bill back the unit owners that do want the charging stations for your entire fee.
So it costs nothing to have us come out and go over the design and do the design for you and give you a proposal. So then you can charge the unit owner nothing. We love to come out. I love to come out and I love doing these meetings and getting through all the information because it ends up always having to be a community meeting or a board meeting. Even if one person wants to do something, the property manager has to get involved. So we get all the information out there right at the initial meeting so that it turns into a discussion of, well, there's one person talking about it. Well, now one person talked about it and another person said, well, you know what? I was thinking about it too. And then another person will say that. And then another person will say that. And at that point, you can decide, well, you know what? Maybe we should just put in 4 communal chargers, satisfy everybody, amortize the cost of doing the install. So it doesn't cost any individual unit owner any money right away. And then it just, as you charge your card, the money comes off your credit card, goes back into the association account to amortize the install. But yeah, to have us come out is completely free. No, it depends on it's tailored to every building. So it depends on how close you are to the electrical room, how much power you have, what type of charger you want to do. If we have to go underground, overhead, there's so many factors. So every building is different, and we'll create a proposal or a range of magnitude for the building to be able to budget depending on if they want to do 2 or 300. You're welcome.
Danny, it's good to see you again. I participated in another seminar with you. I have a question about, from your experience, are we using more electricity normally in a building than we were 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Or have the efficiencies of appliances and lighting reduced the overall load?
Great question. Awesome question. Yeah, in the last 20 years, we've reduced our costs significantly. I want to say potentially even by 50% by installing LED lights, by installing VFDs in front of all of the motors and all of the rooftop units. We've really significantly decreased our energy consumption. And yeah, installing these chargers is bringing it right back up to where it was 10 years ago, which is why I don't want people to install 10 or 50 or 100 now, because just like VFDs and just like LEDs, as it's changing, it's going to take less power, because realistically, 50 buildings, every single owner has an electric car. That power doesn't exist. The utility doesn't have that power. They probably couldn't even build that power. So it's a problem that's coming and everyone sees it. So, all these companies that are making these chargers now are trying to get better and take less power to do the exact same charge. And just like LEDs, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there was maybe 3 or 5 brands. Today, there's probably 60 or 70. And in 2 years from now, there's probably going to be 3,000 or 4,000 different brands that they gotta find a way to take less power to do this. So yeah, we have been getting so much better and we're not going the right way.
Two questions. First of all, for the app-based systems for billing, do the app providers charge a service fee on top of what the association is charging for usage and amortization of the install?
Yeah, so it's really important to do your research on your brand. Your electrician, most electricians don't rep any single brand, right? A lot of brands will try to partner with bigger electric companies to make sure they use their chargers. The thing is, you want the charger that is best for your building, that probably charges the least amount of fees, right? So I always tell people, get 3 or 4 bids. Do your research on all the different brands of chargers that everyone has given you in their bid. I always produce a specification sheet. And realistically, when we do it, we have the rep come out and speak to the building directly, because any electrician that's going to install these chargers for you, most of them are just going to get it from the supplier. They're never going to deal with the rep. And then they're going to install it. And once the install's done, if you're having problems with the charger, it's not the electrician's responsibility. It's the brand's responsibility. So now you got to call the hotline. You're going to go on hold. They're going to drop the call. Then you're going to talk to somebody. Then they're going to say, oh, I can't help you. I'm going to transfer you to somebody else. Then you're going to be on hold. Then you realize you went to the wrong person. Then you're going to call me and say, Danny, take the charger out now. I want something else. And I'm going to say, yeah, no problem. We'll give you something else. So it's up to you in the beginning to make sure you have the right brand. You're happy with the brand.
And you carry different brands then in your.
There's all different brands, just like LEDs. There's a million different brands, but the brands that I bring in, if the rep doesn't show up to the meeting, when I call him to come to the meeting, we're not going to install that brand, because if they already won't come to the point of sale, how do you think they're going to act after it's installed and they've been paid?
So the second question I have is, if you're, say, installing 4 level 2 charging stations, are those sharing power, those 4 stations? Or so that if there are all 4 cars charging at one time, then you would be charging it at a slower speed? Or are they all on their own individual circuit?
That is not just a great question. I forgot to touch on that. So thank you. So a perfect example is this. So, okay, so most of the car charger brands have something called power sharing. So you can have one line that does 2 chargers. And if you plug in one charger, it uses the full line. And then if you use the second charger, it cuts the line in half and splits it both ways. I was at a building last week that, they heard me speak and they wanted me to go up against their additional quotes that they already had. And everyone was giving them 2 chargers on one line. Nobody told them they only have one line, because they already had the line run out. They had it prepped for like a year for something else. And they're like, no, we already have a 40 amp line out there. We want 2 chargers. Okay, I'm going to come by. I'm going to take a look. I open it up and there's only one line. I'm like, did they tell you that you're going to be doing power sharing? They're like, no. I said, well, you're gonna, because if they're not running a brand new line back into the garage, there's only one line here. And you're going to pay for 2 level 2 chargers, which is, it's not nothing. It's, you're going to pay for that. And if 2 people plug in, you may as well only had a level 1. There's no point. Like it's great if you're really limited on power and you want to do the best you can. That's why they created power sharing with the chargers. You know, in a pinch, it's something good to have. But if you have the power and you want to plug in 2 cars, just plug in 2 cars with 2 separate sources or 2 separate feeds, one for each charger. And that way everybody's charging as quickly as they expect to be charging. But most of the chargers do power sharing, so they will cut the line in half. Great question. Thank you.
Andy, I've heard of these level 3 chargers where the charge from the power company varies with the time of day. Does that happen in Florida? And does the app know enough to change the charging price?
So the app won't change it. You're going to decide. So if your fluctuation is 8 cents to 15 cents per kilowatt hour, depending on time of day, and you want to amortize the initial cost of the install, you know, a lot of the buildings that I deal with will charge between $1.50 and $2 per kilowatt hour, which people like shocked. Well, we're only paying 12 to 15 cents. Why is it $1.50 to $2? Well, you want to amortize the initial installation, which it's still going to take like 3 to 5 years. But also as the fluctuation happens and next year, if the utility decides to raise the price, everything's covered. And it's still only between $5 and $10 to charge your car.
Hey, Danny, you mentioned that the level 1 charger was about 12.5 amps. How many amps are on level 2 and level 3s?
So we can go on wattage, but level 1 runs between 12.5 and 16 amps, depending on if it's a 15 or 20 amp plug. The level 2s run 30 or 40 amps, depending on the charger, 2-pole, not 3-pole. And then the level 3s are between 80 and 150 amps. You can even get them 250 amps at 480 volt 3-phase.
If any members attending via Zoom, if you have a question, please use the raise your hand feature. Thank you. I show no questions on Zoom.
Okay, awesome. That means I did a good job. Thanks, guys.
Well, thanks to Juneau Center for inviting us. It was great to see y'all. I'll stick around if you have any questions about the fat dog. You know, that not right on this topic. So I'll be here for a few minutes and I'm sure Danny will too. So thank y'all for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. I just want to mention that we are going to have one more seminar before the year ends, the season ends, and that will be in April. And the topic is responsibilities and liabilities, what it means to be an association board member. And it's going to touch a lot on having adequate reserves and, you know, borrowing if need be, and the structuring of loans and lots of good stuff. So thanks for coming, everyone.
Yeah.